Ready to tackle some chaos and maybe even figure out the good life thing?
Always up for that.
Well, today we're going deep on Stoicism, with Brigid Delaney's book as our guide. Reasons Not to Worry, it's called. How to Be Stoic in Chaotic Times, subtitle.
Sounds right up our alley.
Right. I think Delaney's take on it is really interesting, weaving in her own experiences and stuff.
Yeah, and I think what makes her book so engaging is it's not just like some dry philosophy lecture,
No, not at all.
It's like she's right there with you,
Yeah.
figuring it out in real time. Kind of makes Stoicism feel surprisingly relatable.
For sure. Like
Yeah.
right away, she throws this intense story at you about a near-death experience she had at 29, no less.
Wow. Yeah, that'll get your attention.
Seriously. Talk about a wake-up call.
Makes you think about your own mortality, for sure. And that whole pre-grieving thing Delaney talks about. Heavy stuff.
Oh, totally. Imagining loved ones dying while they're still here. Oh, that's rough.
It's not easy, that's for sure. But, the Stoics believe that, confronting loss actually helps us appreciate what we have right now.
Interesting.
It's not about dwelling on the sadness. It's about realizing that, nothing lasts forever. Makes the present moment that much more precious.
Okay, I get that. But how do you actually, do that? It's not like I can just flip a switch and become all chill about death.
It's a practice. It takes time.
Right.
The Stoics weren't saying to, spend all day moping about death, but just incorporate small reminders. Think about something you really value, maybe a close relationship, something beautiful you've seen.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
Now imagine it's gone.
Ooh.
What comes up? What do you find yourself clinging to?
Wow, yeah. It makes you realize how much you take things for granted.
Exactly. By acknowledging that things could disappear, it helps us savor them more fully, while we still have them.
That's a really different way of thinking about things.
It is.
So embracing mortality, that's kind of the starting point for Stoicism.
Yeah, you could say that.
The foundation.
Yeah.
But how do we apply these ideas to everyday life? The stuff that really stresses us out.
Well, Delaney talks about this tool. She calls it the control test.
The control test.
It's really at the heart of Stoicism. Focus on what you can control, like your actions, your reactions.
And let go of what you can't.
Exactly.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when we're constantly being told we should be able to control everything. Our careers, our social media image.
All of it, yeah. So how did Delaney use this control test in her own life?
Well, she gives this great example. When she was denied a pay raise at work, she was feeling really frustrated, undervalued, almost quit. But when she applied the control test,
Yeah.
she realized she couldn't control the ultimate decision. What she could control was her performance, her work ethic, her attitude.
So it's not about suppressing feelings, it's about how you respond to them.
Exactly. By shifting her focus to what she could control, she regained a sense of agency, even though the external situation hadn't changed.
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like so much of my stress comes from things I can't control, like traffic, the weather.
Perfect examples.
Yeah.
Delaney even used a control test during the pandemic lockdowns.
Oh, yeah. When her travel writing career got totally upended.
Yeah, she was stuck, couldn't travel the way she normally did.
That must have been so frustrating.
It was. But even then, she found things she could control. She decided to finally learn to drive, something she'd been putting off forever. And she started exploring places closer to home.
So it's about finding those little pockets of control.
Exactly. Even in chaos, we have choices. Reminds me of that Epictetus quote, It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters.
Powerful stuff. Okay, I'm starting to get how this stoicism thing could be really helpful, but Delaney takes it a step further with this whole preferred indifference concept. What's that all about? Preferred indifference. It sounds kind of like a contradiction.
It does, doesn't it? Think of it this way. We all have things we prefer, right?
Yeah, of course.
Good health, enough money, maybe even some recognition for what we do.
Sure.
The Stoics, they call these things preferred indifference,
Okay.
meaning they're good to have, but they shouldn't, dictate our happiness.
But isn't that kind of counter to, everything our society tells us, strive for more,
Yeah.
achieve more, all that?
Exactly. And that's where Stoicism flips the script. It offers a really different perspective. Take wealth, for example.
Okay.
It's good to have enough money to, live comfortably.
Right.
But the Stoics would say that constantly chasing after more and more can actually make you less happy.
So it's not about rejecting those things completely. It's more about not getting, attached to them, not letting them control you.
You got it. And that's where the story of Diogenes comes in.
Diogenes.
Delaney mentions him in the book. It's kind of an extreme example of this idea. Remember, the philosopher who lived in a barrel.
Oh, yeah. The guy who rejected all material possessions.
That's him.
Pretty radical dude.
He was.
Not sure I'm ready to give up my apartment just yet, but I see the point.
It's about questioning our assumptions
Yeah.
about what we think will make us happy.
For sure.
Diogenes took it to the extreme, but he makes you think, right, about the trap of hedonic adaptation.
Hedonic adaptation.
It's this tendency we have to get used to new things, even positive changes.
Oh, yeah. Like when you get a new car.
Exactly. Or a new phone.
At first it's so exciting, and then it's just like normal part of the background.
Exactly. It's like we're on this treadmill, always
Yeah.
wanting more,
Yeah.
thinking the next thing will be the key to, lasting happiness.
Oh, totally.
The Stoics would say true contentment comes from within, not from, external stuff.
Okay, so how do we get off that treadmill? How do we cultivate that inner contentment in a world that's like constantly telling us what we should have and who we should be?
Good question. It's not easy.
Mm.
But the Stoics offer some techniques. One that Delaney explores is negative visualization.
Negative visualization?
Have you ever tried that?
Well, I've heard of it. It sounds a little scary, though. Like, you imagine all the worst-case scenarios.
It's not about being pessimistic.
Right.
It's more like a thought experiment. The Stoics believed that by considering those potential losses, it could actually help us appreciate what we have right now.
So it's like a way of preparing yourself for the ups and downs of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, Delaney actually tries it out in the book
Yeah.
with some pretty funny results, I have to say.
Oh, yeah, where she's like picturing her house burning down and everything. It's kind of stressful just reading about it.
It can be intense,
Yeah.
but the point is to shift perspective, to realize that even if those things happened, we'd still be okay. We'd still have our inner resources, our character, our ability to choose how we respond.
I like that.
It's powerful.
It's about remembering that even in the midst of chaos, we have that power to choose.
Exactly. And that power comes from cultivating those Stoic virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance.
Oh, yeah. We haven't really talked much about those yet. And it seems like they play a pretty important role in Stoicism.
They do.
Can you unpack those a little bit?
Sure. The Stoics believed those virtues were essential for living a good and meaningful life. So, wisdom.
Yeah.
That's about understanding the world and making, sound judgments.
Okay.
Courage is about facing our fears, doing what's right, even when it's hard.
Right.
Justice is about treating others fairly and honestly. And temperance, well, that's about finding balance, moderation in all things.
So it's not just about like avoiding negative emotions. It's about actively trying to be a better person.
That's a great way to put it. Stoicism isn't passive. It's about taking responsibility for our own actions and our choices
That makes sense.
and striving to live, in accordance with those virtues.
Okay, I'm following you. All this is starting to click for me. But let's be real. Even with the best intentions, our minds can be our own worst enemies,
Well, yeah,
right?
sure.
We get caught up in judgments, anxieties, those inner critics. How does Stoicism help us deal with all that internal chatter?
It's a big one.
Mm.
And it's something Delaney tackles head on in her book. One of the key insights of Stoicism. A lot of our suffering
Yeah.
comes from our own thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
our judgments, not the external events themselves.
Like when we overthink things or misinterpret what someone's doing.
Exactly. The Stoics would say we need to be careful about the stories we tell ourselves, the assumptions we make about others, and the judgments we hold on to.
So it's about becoming more aware of our thought patterns.
Yes.
And recognizing when those thoughts are like helpful or harmful.
Exactly. Cultivating a sense of mindfulness, paying attention to that inner dialogue,
Right.
and challenging those negative thoughts,
Makes sense.
And this is especially important when it comes to, social media.
Oh, tell me about it. Social media can be a minefield.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to others, judging their lives, getting sucked into all the outrage.
The Stoics would definitely caution us there to be mindful of the information we consume, and how much energy we invest in those online interactions.
For sure. It's easy to get swept away by it all.
They'd remind us that true strength lies in maintaining our own reason, our own judgment.
Even when we're surrounded by all that chaos and negativity online.
Especially then.
That's a good point. It's about choosing where we direct our attention.
Exactly. and not letting, external forces dictate how we feel.
Delaney actually talks about having a Twitter nemesis in the book.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Someone who was always like criticizing her work.
And instead of getting into it with them,
She just chose to ignore it, focus on her own writing.
that takes a lot of restraint.
It does. It's so tempting to get sucked into those online battles.
It is. But the Stoics would say, why waste your energy trying to change someone else's mind? Especially online. It's far more effective to focus on your own actions, and live by your own values.
So choose your battles wisely. Recognize when it's better to just step away.
Exactly.
And that applies to, offline interactions too, right?
Absolutely. It's one of the fundamental tenets of Stoicism.
Yeah.
We have very little control over what other people do,
Mm.
but we have complete control over our own reactions.
Right. It's a good reminder. But honestly, sometimes it's really hard not to react,
Oh, for sure.
especially when we're dealing with strong emotions.
Like anger.
Yeah, anger. It seems like it's everywhere these days.
Yeah.
Online, in the news, sometimes even popping up in my own life. Is there a stoic way to deal with anger, especially when it feels so justified?
That's such an important question. And you're right. Anger can feel really powerful, really justified sometimes. But the Stoics actually consider it to be one of the most destructive emotions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
They saw it as like a temporary madness.
Yeah.
Something that could cloud our judgment and lead us to do things we regret later.
So it's not about suppressing anger, because sometimes anger can be a motivator to, make change.
It's true. Anger can sometimes drive us to action. But the Stoics would say there are better ways to address injustice or wrongdoing. They believed anger often stems from, our own judgments, expectations,
Interesting.
not the situation itself.
So when we feel someone's wronged us,
Yeah,
we get angry because we think they should have acted differently.
exactly. It's all about our perception. Remember what Seneca said? The best plan is to reject straight away the first incentives to anger. Like, stop it before it even starts.
So catch it early before it escalates.
Exactly, before it takes over.
Yeah.
Instead of just reacting with anger, the Stoics would say pause. Ask yourself, have I truly been harmed?
Such a simple question, but it really makes you think.
Right. It forces you to step back from the emotion
Totally.
and really assess what's going on.
It's like, is this really worth sacrificing my peace of mind over?
That's the key question. And it reminds me of that story Delaney tells.
About her Twitter nemesis.
Yes. Instead of getting dragged into a fight, she chose to walk away.
She recognized that engaging with that anger wouldn't help anything.
Exactly. A perfect example of choosing your battles
Yeah.
and prioritizing your own well-being. One thing that really resonated with me from Delaney's book was how she talks about dealing with loss.
Yeah, that was powerful.
It's easy to talk about stoicism when things are good. But what about when we're facing, real grief, real trauma?
That's what I was wondering too. Does Stoicism have anything to offer in those moments?
Well, Delaney shares this really moving story about talking about stoicism with a friend who was battling cancer.
Right, and she talked about that idea of being injured twice, once by the loss itself.
And then again, by our reaction to it.
Yeah.
It's a hard concept to grapple with.
It is.
But the Stoics recognize that we can't control the fact that, loss and suffering are part of life. What we can control,
Yeah.
how we respond to it.
So it's not about denying the pain.
No, not at all.
Or pretending it doesn't affect us.
It's about acknowledging the sadness, the grief, letting
Yeah.
yourself feel it,
Yeah.
but not letting it, consume you.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Yes.
Between accepting what we can't change
What?
and choosing how we move forward.
You got it. And remember, this applies to all kinds of loss.
Not just death.
Right. It could be a job, a relationship, even a dream. The Stoic approach encourages us to find solace in acceptance.
Acceptance of what we can't control.
Yes. And then focusing on what we can.
That's powerful. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Stoicism...
Already.
I know, right? Time flies when you're contemplating the void. But seriously, what are some key takeaways you hope our listeners will, take with them from this conversation?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is this. Stoicism isn't about becoming, some emotionless robot.
Right.
It's about using reason and mindfulness to choose how we respond to our emotions. And, all the curveballs life throws our way.
It's about recognizing that we have more control than we think. Over our inner world, at least.
That's it.
And that we can choose to focus on what we can control, accept what we can't, and, live a life guided by those virtues we talked about: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance.
I love that. And Delaney's book does a fantastic job of making these ideas accessible. She shows us that Stoicism isn't just some dusty old philosophy.
Right.
It's a set of tools and practices that can actually help us navigate the messiness of modern life.
With more resilience, clarity, and peace of mind.
Exactly.
I think it's such a powerful reminder that we all have that choice.
Right.
We can choose to let negativity and chaos run the show, or we can cultivate a sense of inner peace, inner strength that allows us to weather the storms with a bit more grace, a bit more wisdom.
Beautifully said. And maybe, just maybe, by embracing these Stoic principles,
Yeah.
we can even find moments of joy.
Even amidst all the chaos.
Even then.
I love that. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. And to everyone listening, we hope you'll keep exploring Stoicism, see what it can do for you. Until next time, take care.